Daniel Carter sat in the cold metal cell, his wrists bound by energy cuffs that glowed faintly in the dim light. He had lost count of how long he had been here. Days, weeks. Time had blurred together in this sterile prison. The walls hummed with an unnatural energy, and the air smelled of something metallic and artificial. He wasn't afraid. Not yet. Instead, he watched, waiting for the next move. Outside the reinforced glass, Dr. Xaltor observed him with calculating eyes. Xaltor was not human. His elongated, blue-skinned face lacked a nose, and his large black eyes never blinked. He belonged to the Vasheri, one of the oldest and most advanced species in the Galactic Union. To him, humans were nothing more than a curiosity, an unpredictable, primitive race that had somehow managed to spread across the stars. Xaltor had studied countless species, broken them down into patterns and formulas. But this human confused him. He should have been scared, angry, desperate to escape. That was how captives behaved. Yet Daniel sat there with a calm expression, as if he was the one in control. The scientist had seen warriors break under less pressure. This human, however, acted as if he were merely waiting for an opportunity. With a press of a button, the energy cuffs tightened. The pain should have made Daniel flinch, but he simply exhaled, tilting his head slightly as if amused. "Tell me, human," Xaltor said, his voice smooth and measured. "What makes your kind so difficult to understand?" Daniel smirked. "Maybe you're asking the wrong questions." Xaltor frowned. "Explain." Daniel leaned forward slightly, the motion making the guards tense. "You think I'm just some primitive creature, right? Predictable, weak, easy to manipulate. But here's the problem. You're trying to fit me into a box that doesn't exist. Humans don't follow the rules you're used to." Xaltor's fingers twitched. He hated unpredictability. Every species had patterns, behaviors that could be categorized, studied, controlled. But humans, you resist logic. Xaltor murmured, more to himself than to Daniel. Daniel chuckled. "Yeah, we do that a lot." Xaltor turned away, hands clasped behind his back. "Your species is reckless. You spread across the galaxy like wildfire, engaging in wars you shouldn't win, surviving in conditions that should kill you. And yet, here you are." He glanced back at Daniel. "Why?" Daniel shrugged. "Because we don't know when to quit." Xaltor considered this. He had seen humans defeat enemies that vastly outmatched them. They lacked the biological advantages of many species. No natural armor, no superior strength, no psychic abilities. And yet, they adapted, learned, evolved faster than anyone expected. A signal flashed on the console, indicating that the tests were ready. Xaltor activated the control panel, and the walls of the cell shimmered. The air around Daniel grew heavy, pressing against him with an unseen force. It was a gravity increase. Twice the normal level, then 3 times, then 4. Any ordinary human would collapse, gasping for air, their bones struggling under the pressure. Daniel groaned but didn't fall. He gritted his teeth, his muscles trembling, sweat forming on his brow. But he held himself up. Xaltor's curiosity deepened. Most beings had limits. Push them hard enough, and they broke. But humans had something else, something that refused to yield even when logic dictated otherwise. "Impressive," Xaltor admitted. "But how long can you last?" Daniel met his gaze, a flicker of defiance in his eyes. "Long enough." The scientist watched, fascinated. He had seen warriors fall to this test, soldiers cry out in agony, beg for relief. Yet this human endured, his body screaming for mercy, but his mind refusing to surrender. For the first time, Xaltor felt something unexpected: doubt. Maybe the Galactic Union had underestimated these creatures. Maybe humanity was far more dangerous than they had ever realized. The gravity field deactivated, and Daniel collapsed to his knees, gasping for breath. His muscles burned, his limbs felt like lead, But he refused to show weakness. He clenched his fists and forced himself back onto his feet, ignoring the pain coursing through his body. Across the reinforced glass, Dr. Xaltor studied him with silent intrigue. Most beings would have passed out. Some would have suffered broken bones or internal injuries. But the human remained standing. Bruised, exhausted, but standing. Xaltor found himself unsettled. He had expected resistance, but not this level of stubborn defiance. The scientist pressed a button, and the gravity chamber returned to normal. The air became lighter, almost pleasant, but Daniel remained still, waiting. Xaltor stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "You are persistent," Xaltor admitted, "but persistence without reason is foolishness." Daniel smirked, wiping sweat from his brow. "Maybe. Or maybe you just don't understand what makes us different." Xaltor narrowed his dark eyes. "And what is that?" Daniel leaned against the cold wall, breathing deeply before answering. "We don't break the way you think we do. You keep testing my body, my limits, but that's not where real strength comes from." He tapped his temple. "It's in here. The moment you think we're beaten, that's when we're most dangerous." Xaltor considered his words carefully. Every species had limits, physical, mental, and emotional. Once those limits were reached, survival instincts kicked in. They begged, they surrendered, they adapted to their new reality. But humans, they defied expectation. They endured what should be impossible. The scientist turned away, lost in thought. He had spent years mapping out the psychology of different species, breaking down their instincts, their fears, their weaknesses. But humans did not fit neatly into any category. They adapted too quickly, resisted too fiercely. It was illogical. It was terrifying. The door to the observation room hissed open, and a tall, armored figure entered. The uniform bore the insignia of the Galactic Union, and the air around him radiated authority. "Dr. Xaltor," the officer spoke in a sharp, clipped tone. "Enough with the tests. The Council wants the human transferred to the interrogation unit immediately." Xaltor stiffened, but did not argue. The Council rarely involved itself directly in scientific studies. If they wanted the human, it meant they saw him as more than just a specimen. They saw him as a threat. Daniel remained silent as the guards entered his cell, unlocking the restraints on his wrists only to replace them with heavier shackles. They expected him to resist. He didn't. Not yet. As they escorted him out, Xaltor watched him go, unease creeping into his thoughts. He had studied countless species, but something told him that this human story was only beginning. And for the first time in his career, Xaltor wasn't sure if he was the observer or the one being observed. "You said." Daniel walked between two towering guards, his hands bound in heavy restraints. The corridor was dimly lit, the walls pulsing with the faint blue glow of energy conduits. Every few meters, automated turrets tracked his movement, their targeting systems humming softly. This place was designed to hold the most dangerous beings in the galaxy. Yet despite all their security, they still didn't understand what made him dangerous. The guards led him through a set of reinforced doors, which slid open with a hiss. Inside was a circular chamber, sterile and metallic, with a single chair in the center. The walls were lined with holographic screens, some displaying diagrams of human physiology, others filled with alien text Daniel couldn't read. He didn't need to. He knew exactly what this place was: an interrogation room. Across from him, Dr. Xaltor stood beside a figure Daniel hadn't seen before. This alien was different, taller, clad in a regal dark blue uniform with intricate silver patterns woven into the fabric. His deep violet skin marked him as a member of the High Council. That meant Daniel wasn't just a curiosity anymore. He was a problem. The counselor stepped forward, his piercing silver eyes scanning Daniel as if trying to peel back the layers of his mind. "Human," he said, his voice smooth but cold. "You are Daniel Carter, a soldier from the Terran Defense Fleet. captured after your vessel was destroyed. Daniel smirked. That's one way to put it. I prefer reluctant guest. The counselor ignored his remark. You will tell us everything you know. About your people, your military capabilities, your strategies. He gestured to the chair. Sit. Daniel exhaled, rolling his shoulders. He didn't move. I think I'll stand. One of the guards stepped forward, slamming the butt of his weapon into Daniel's stomach. Pain shot through him, but he barely staggered. He had been hit harder before. Zaltor observed quietly, his expression unreadable. The counselor sighed. I expected this. Your species has a reputation for defiance. He nodded to Zaltor, who pressed a control panel. A sudden surge of energy shot through Daniel's restraints, sending white-hot pain lancing through his body. His muscles seized, his vision blurred, but he gritted his teeth and endured. He wouldn't give them the satisfaction of screaming. After a few seconds, the pain ceased. Daniel exhaled sharply, shaking his head. That all you got? He rasped. The counselor raised a brow. Fascinating. Most beings would be pleading by now. Daniel forced a grin. Most beings aren't human. Zaltor stepped forward, eyes narrowing. You believe your species is special, that your resistance makes you superior. Daniel met his gaze. Not superior. Just different. You can't break us the way you think. The counselor studied him for a long moment before shaking his head. We shall see. He turned to Zaltor. Increase the intensity. Let's find out what truly makes a human break. Daniel took a slow breath. He had been in worse situations before. He knew pain was coming. But what they didn't know, what they could never understand, was that humans didn't just endure. They adapted, and they fought back. They just didn't see it coming yet. The pain came in waves, searing through Daniel's nerves like fire. His muscles clenched involuntarily, his breathing ragged, but he refused to scream. The energy coursing through his restraints was meant to break his will, to make him submit. It wouldn't. Dr. Zaltor monitored the readings on the holo display, his dark eyes narrowing as he analyzed Daniel's response. Heart rate elevated but steady, muscles showing strain but not reaching critical failure. The human should have collapsed by now. Any other species would have. The counselor folded his hands behind his back, his expression calm. Increase the power. Zaltor hesitated. At this level, his nervous system may sustain permanent damage. The counselor barely glanced at him. Irrelevant. Zaltor exhaled but obeyed. He adjusted the controls, and the restraints glowed a fierce red. The next wave of agony struck Daniel like lightning, making his entire body tense. His vision blurred, his jaw clenched so hard it ached. But even as his body screamed, his mind remained clear. He had been trained for this. Torture was a weapon, but only against those who allowed it to be. Pain was temporary. His will was not. Seconds stretched into eternity before the energy field finally shut down. Daniel slumped slightly, breathing hard, sweat dripping from his brow. His body was exhausted, but he remained upright. The room was silent. The counselor tilted his head. Most creatures break under far less. Yet you endure. Why? Daniel managed a weak chuckle. Because you don't understand what you're dealing with. He raised his eyes, locking onto the counselor's gaze. You think pain is enough to make us surrender? You don't get it. Pain just reminds us we're alive. And as long as we're alive, we fight. Zaltor's fingers twitched slightly. The scientist had spent his life studying the limits of species across the galaxy. He had seen warriors, predators, even so-called conquerors. But there was something unsettling about humanity, something no datapad could quantify. The counselor's expression darkened. Your defiance is meaningless. You are alone. Your fleet is gone. No one is coming for you. Daniel smiled, slow, knowing. That's the other thing you don't get. He leaned forward, his voice steady despite the pain. Humans don't leave their own behind. For the first time, a flicker of something crossed the counselor's face. Uncertainty. Then the alarms blared. Red warning lights flashed across the chamber as a mechanical voice echoed through the speakers. Unauthorized breach detected. External forces inbound. All security units to battle stations. Zaltor's eyes widened. The counselor spun toward the holo display, scanning the data. Daniel straightened, a smirk playing at his lips. Told you. The counselor turned back to him, realization dawning. This wasn't a random act of defiance. Daniel had endured because he knew what was coming. A human rescue. And the galaxy was about to learn what that truly meant. You said. The station trembled. A distant explosion rumbled through the metal walls, followed by the unmistakable sound of emergency bulkhead sealing. The alarms screamed their warning, bathing the interrogation chamber in flashing red light. Dr. Xaltor's fingers danced across the control panel, his expression tight with worry. "This is impossible," he muttered. "No fleet should have been able to reach us unnoticed." The counselor's face twisted in rage as he turned toward Daniel. "What have you done?" Daniel, despite the pain still thrumming in his body, grinned. "I told you. Humans don't leave their own behind." The station shuddered again. The holoscreens flickered, displaying external views of the battle unfolding outside. The alien fleet stationed around the facility was in chaos. Fighters darted between warships, energy blasts illuminating the void. The station's shields flickered under sustained bombardment. Then the camera feeds cut out, one by one. Zaltor's breath caught. "They're systematically taking out our surveillance." Daniel let out a slow exhale, rolling his shoulders. His muscles ached, but the sight of his people coming for him filled him with renewed energy. "You still don't get it, do you?" The counselor's silver eyes burned with fury. "What?" Daniel met his gaze, calm and certain. "This isn't just a rescue mission. This is a message." Before the counselor could respond, the chamber's doors exploded inward. The shockwave knocked the guards off their feet, sending debris flying. Smoke filled the air, the scent of burning metal thick. Through the haze, armored figures stepped forward, Terran shock troopers. Their weapons gleamed under the flickering lights, their visors glowing an ominous crimson. They moved with precision, executing the dazed guards before they could react. The counselor stumbled backward, his composure cracking. "No, this is a secured facility." One of the troopers turned his helmeted head toward Daniel. "Commander Carter, we're getting you out." Daniel grinned despite the pain. "Took you long enough." With a hiss, his restraints unlocked, the metal cuffs falling away. He stretched his fingers, shaking off the lingering numbness. The lead trooper tossed him a sidearm. Daniel caught it smoothly, the familiar weight settling into his palm like an old friend. The counselor took an unsteady step back. You don't understand what you've done." Daniel leveled his weapon at the alien's head. "No, you don't understand what you started." The station rocked again, another explosion ripping through its structure. Outside, the human fleet pressed its assault. This wasn't just a battle. It was a reckoning. Daniel turned to his rescuers. "Let's finish this." And with that, humanity's fury was unleashed. You said. The corridors of the alien station were a war zone. The air was thick with the acrid scent of burning metal, the flickering emergency lights casting long, chaotic shadows. Terran shock troopers moved with lethal efficiency, cutting down resistance with disciplined precision. Every burst of their pulse rifles sent another enemy to the floor, their armor glistening with the blood of those foolish enough to stand against them. Daniel Carter led the charge. His body still ached from the torture, but the adrenaline drowned out the pain. He moved like a predator unleashed, his borrowed sidearm firing in controlled bursts. Every shot was precise, every movement calculated. He had been trained for this, not just to survive, but to win. Dr. Xaltor stumbled after them, his breath ragged. The scientist had never seen war up close, had never felt the raw, terrifying presence of humans in combat. He had read reports, analyzed strategies, but nothing had prepared him for the sheer brutality of it. These weren't mindless berserkers. They were something far worse. They were hunters. The counselor, however, was nowhere to be seen. He had fled the interrogation chamber the moment the shooting started, leaving his guards to die in his place. But Daniel wasn't worried. There was nowhere left to run. A sudden explosion tore through the hallway ahead, sending debris flying. The station shuddered as more sections of it collapsed under the relentless human assault. They weren't just here to rescue Daniel. They were dismantling the entire facility, piece by piece. One of the troopers turned toward him. "Commander, extraction team reports that our fleet has neutralized enemy reinforcements. We have a window to get you out." Daniel shook his head. "Not yet. The counselor's still here." The trooper hesitated. "Sir, our mission was to retrieve you." Daniel's expression hardened. "And now our mission is to make sure he never does this to anyone else again." The squad exchanged silent glances, then nodded. Orders were orders, but no soldier of the Terran forces would ever leave an enemy capable of such atrocities alive. They moved quickly, sweeping through the station's corridors, their boots echoing against the trembling floors. Zaltor hesitated before following, fear battling with curiosity. He had never expected to survive this long. His instincts screamed at him to flee, to hide, but another part of him needed to see how this ended. Then, ahead of them, the bulkhead doors slammed shut. Daniel barely had time to react before the station's automated voice echoed through the speakers. "Self-destruct sequence engage. T-5 minutes until detonation." Zaltor's blood ran cold. He's going to destroy the station. Daniel cursed under his breath. Of course, the counselor would rather burn everything down than let them have their victory. "Can we override it?" one of the troopers asked. Zaltor hesitated. "If we reach the control center, I may be able to delay it." Daniel's jaw clenched. "Then we move." Now. They sprinted through the failing station, dodging collapsing debris and enemy stragglers desperate to escape the coming destruction. Gunfire and screams echoed from distant corridors, but Daniel didn't slow. There was no time. As they reached the command center, the doors hissed open, and standing inside, waiting for them, was the counselor. He wasn't running anymore. He stood before the central console, his hand hovering over the final override command. His expression was unreadable, his silver eyes locking onto Daniel's with something close to respect. "You truly are extraordinary creatures," the counselor said quietly. "Perhaps that is why you are so dangerous." Daniel raised his weapon. "Turn it off. Now." The counselor's lips curled into a slow, knowing smile. "No." And then he pressed the button. The countdown accelerated. 2 minutes remaining. Daniel didn't hesitate. He fired. The shot hit the counselor square in the chest, sending him sprawling. Blood spread across his ornate robes, his breath hitching as he stared up at the ceiling. But he was smiling. "You think you've won," he rasped. "But the galaxy will never stop fearing you." Daniel stepped forward, staring down at him. "Good." Then he turned to Zaltor. "Shut it down." Zaltor's hands flew over the controls, his claws tapping in rapid succession. His mind raced, calculating probabilities, bypassing security protocols. Seconds ticked away, every warning alarm screaming in his ears. 30 seconds. Daniel watched, his pulse steady. The troopers stood ready, prepared for either salvation or destruction. 15 seconds. Zaltor growled in frustration. "Come on. Come on." Then the alarm stopped. The countdown froze at 3 seconds. The scientist slumped forward, exhaling sharply. "It's done." Daniel nodded once. "Then let's get out of here." The team moved fast, making their way toward the extraction point as the station continued to crumble around them. Zaltor hesitated for just a moment, casting one last glance at the counselor's lifeless body. Then he turned and followed the humans. As they reached the docking bay, Daniel looked back one final time. The station had been a place of suffering, a place where the galaxy thought it could break humanity. But now, it was just another wreck, and humanity was still standing. The human warship loomed over the wreckage of the alien station, its hull reflecting the fading fires of destruction. The mission was over. The station was in ruins, its leaders dead, its secrets burned away. Yet, as Daniel Carter stepped onto the command deck of the TNS Retribution, he knew this war was far from finished. The bridge was alive with movement. Officers relayed commands, data streams flickered across holographic displays, and fleet movements played out in real time. The human fleet had suffered minimal losses, a testament to their brutal efficiency. A voice cut through the chatter. "Commander Carter on deck." The crew snapped to attention. Admiral Reeves turned from the central display, his sharp eyes locking onto Daniel. "Hell of a mess you left behind, Carter." Daniel gave a tired smirk. "Didn't have time to clean up." The Admiral grunted, crossing his arms. "We got what we came for. But we also sent a message." Zaltor, standing awkwardly near the edge of the room, shifted uncomfortably. "And what message is that?" The Admiral turned his gaze toward him, his expression unreadable. "That humanity isn't prey." The alien scientist swallowed hard. He had always known humans were dangerous. But now he understood it. They weren't just warriors. They were something far more terrifying, something relentless. Daniel stepped forward, his voice quieter but firm. "This won't be the end of it. The rest of the council will hear about what happened here. They won't let this go." Reeves nodded grimly. "We're prepared for that. The question is, are they?" Zaltor felt a chill run down his spine. He had spent his life studying the patterns of war, the shifting alliances of the galaxy. Empires rose and fell, but the balance of power remained. Yet, in a single night, humanity had changed everything. They had faced the galaxy's cruelty and responded with something far worse: determination. One of the officers looked up from her console. "Admiral, incoming transmission from the Galactic Council. High priority." Reeves exhaled, rolling his shoulders. "Patch it through." The main view screen flickered to life, revealing the imposing figure of Supreme Counselor Vereth. His golden robes were pristine, his scaled face impassive, but his eyes burned with fury. "Admiral Reeves," Vereth began, his tone measured but cold. "You have committed an act of war against the Council. You have assaulted a secure facility, slaughtered our people, and shattered the fragile peace we maintained." Daniel stepped forward. "You kidnapped me. You tortured me. You planned to dissect me to understand why humans are different. You call this peace?" Vereth's gaze hardened. "You were a threat, an unknown variable. And now you have proven exactly why we feared you." Admiral Reeves leaned forward slightly. "You're damn right to fear us." The counselor's expression darkened. "This will not end here. We will retaliate." Daniel met his gaze without hesitation. "Then you'd better be ready for what's coming next." The transmission cut off. The bridge was silent for a long moment. Reeves sighed. "Well, that went about as well as expected." One of the officers chuckled dryly. "They always act tough right before they realize they've made the worst mistake of their lives." Zaltor stared at them all, his mind reeling. You're not afraid, are you?" Daniel turned to him, his expression unreadable. "No." The scientist hesitated. "Even if they bring their full might against you, even if every species in the Council declares war." Reeves smirked. "Let them come." Daniel nodded. "They thought they understood the universe, thought they had control." He turned, looking out the viewport at the countless stars beyond. "But they forgot something important." Zaltor swallowed. "What?" Daniel's eyes burned with quiet certainty. "Humans always adapt." And with that, the war truly began. The war had begun, and the galaxy was watching. The Galactic Council had declared humanity a rogue species, a threat to peace. Fleets were mobilizing. Alliances were shifting. Old enemies became temporary allies, united by fear of the one species that had defied them all. But fear was not enough to stop humanity. On board the TNS Retribution, Commander Daniel Carter stood before the central display, watching as the holographic projections showed the enemy fleet's approach. It was massive. Hundreds of warships from dozens of species, an armada built to crush entire civilizations. Admiral Reeves studied the display with a grim expression. Looks like they brought the whole damn council with them. Zaltor, standing at the edge of the war room, felt his stomach twist. He had never seen such a force assembled before. No species had ever faced the full might of the council and survived. He turned to Daniel. "You can't win this battle. There are too many of them." Daniel didn't flinch. "Then we'll have to change the battle." Zaltor shook his head. "They will come at you with everything. Their fleets are stronger, their technology older and tested. The council has ruled for thousands of years. You don't understand what you're up against." Daniel finally turned to look at him. "No, Zaltor. They don't understand what they're up against." The room fell silent. Reeves exhaled, stepping forward. "We knew this was coming. We knew the moment we struck back that they wouldn't let it go. That's why we didn't just prepare for a battle." He looked at the officers in the room. "We prepared for a war." One of the tacticians spoke up. "Our fleet is smaller, but we have superior tactics. We don't fight like they do. They expect us to meet them head-on." Daniel nodded. "We won't." A hologram change, showing new movements, hit-and-run strikes, deep space ambushes, gravity well traps. The council expected a conventional battle, but that was never humanity's way. Zaltor stared at the display in horror and awe. "You're going to tear them apart piece by piece." "That's the idea," Reeves said. The comms officer suddenly spoke up. "Incoming message. Open channel from the council fleet." Reeves motioned for the connection. The view screen lit up, revealing Supreme Counselor Vereth. His expression was unreadable, but his voice was filled with restrained fury. "Humans, this is your final chance. Surrender now, and your species will be spared." Daniel stepped forward. "Surrender? After what you did? After you kidnapped me? After you threatened Earth? You think we just kneel?" Vereth's eyes narrowed. "If you do not surrender, we will exterminate you." A small smile played on Daniel's lips. "You can try." Vereth exhaled sharply. "You are a young species. You do not understand the weight of history. We have ruled the stars for millennia. Empires rise and fall under our guidance. We are offering you mercy. Do not mistake it for weakness." Reeves folded his arms. "You talk about history, but you never learned the most important lesson." Vereth's eyes flickered. "And what lesson is that?" Daniel's voice was calm. "Empires don't last forever." The transmission cut. For a moment, the bridge was quiet. Then Reeves turned to the crew. "All stations, prepare for battle." The officers snapped into action. Warnings blared. Shields powered up. Weapons systems activated. The human fleet moved, not to meet the enemy head-on, but to disappear into the darkness of space. Zaltor took a shaky breath. "This will change everything." Daniel stared out at the council fleet, his hands clenched into fists. "It already has."